Merriam-Webster defines center of gravity as the point in which the entire body may be considered as concentrated so that if supported at this point, the body would remain in equilibrium in any position. In order to stay balanced, during walking, dancing, or even standing, the center of gravity must remain directly above the area of contact with the floor. This becomes even harder to do when the area is smaller, like when a dancer is on point. In this project, we will try to explain how movements in dance require the center of gravity to shift, and how, if not done correctly, will lead to bad form or may result in a fall.
Sophie Paczak,
Natalya Watson,
Sarah Hart,
Emily Henriques,
Michael Dietrich,
Seth Scruggs.
In dance, we have this thing called partnering, which can be between two girls, two guys, but mostly when they're on point, it's between a guy and a girl. So he will hold her on her waist or her hands and to make sure she balances. So the movements that we did an arabesque that you can see Sarah did. Her center of gravity is very much over her center, but as she lifts up her leg to the back, you can see that it shifts forwards so that the leg in the back has room, and the center of gravity will then shift forward so that she's balanced. In the second video, you can see Natalya go into attitude. The same thing happens there where she shifts forwards, and as she takes her arm up, her center of gravity goes up with her so that she can stay on balance without Michael partnering her. In the third video, you see Sophie, who will then be lifted and carried over by Michael, and her center of gravity goes down as she tilts with him. It's really interesting to see that it didn't stay centered yet, went more towards the ground as she was tilted. Another move that we did were jumps. Both of your feet are up in the air at some point. Your hips will most likely move upwards as well. First jump we did is a firebird. We ensemble, so we put both of our feet together and we plie really hard to gain our energy and momentum to spring right back up, and we shoot 1 foot forwards and 1 foot backwards into attitude. In all 3 of our videos, we stay pretty consistent on our leg, but you can see as we plie downward, our center of gravity shifts pretty far down. It's no longer around our pelvis area. It goes down more towards our knees. And as we spring up, it goes kind of up towards our heads. The second jump we did is Soda Shaw. And same thing happens with this one. In that plie, the center of gravity goes down pretty far and springs up more towards your head. But in this jump, it's moving across the floor instead of just up and down like the firebird.
In the first modern movement we see, the dancers are doing what is called a monkey. This movement is shown by a hand-foot positioning. The goal of this move is for the dancer to get her hips over the shoulders and become in a balanced position. We notice that the dancer begins in the plie, and so the center of gravity is on her hips. The center of gravity moves with her hips, and as she goes down to the plie, the center of gravity moves down with her. And as she pushes off the ground onto her hands, the pelvis moves up over her shoulders, therefore the center of gravity moves up with her. Another modern movement is called an inversion. In this movement, we notice that Natalya is going from her feet onto her hands and making a split with her legs. The center of gravity remains with her hips the entire time. This is very similar to the monkey in that her hips are trying to be over her shoulders. Notice how the center of gravity goes down with her as she plies. In Sophie's inversion, however, she goes from one position to another, not just remaining in one position on the floor. Her center of gravity does the same in the sense of going down and up, but as she moves from one side of her arms to the other, her center of gravity adjusts not just up and down, but side to side. This is the same with Sarah's inversion, that she goes from one direction to another. It goes down with her plie and then up as soon as her pelvis reaches her shoulders. Another modern movement is called a fly. In this movement, the center of gravity starts on the ground with the pelvis and moves up into the air as the pelvis is pushed into the air in alignment with her shoulders. We see this very consistently with every dancer.
The first movement that all of us did was a turn called a pirouette, where you go from 2 feet up to 1 foot, bringing your center of gravity over the standing leg while turning. Before the turn, your center should ideally be over your front leg because you're going to be bringing the center of gravity up and forward at the same time. The weight is transferred completely over the standing leg. The pelvis is over the pubic bone in front of the body. In all pirouettes, you can see this pretty clearly. We go from 2 feet up to 1 foot, and you can see pretty much a straight line while turning, whereas we go up and we go down in one straight line. The second turn we did was called fouettes. This is a continuous set of turns. There's no coming down. You're staying up in the air, and you're continuously turning. You're still bringing your center of gravity from 2 feet up to 1 and lifting, but then you're staying on one leg and lifting it continuously, so your center of gravity does not change. It stays up over your leg the entire time so that you can consistently keep turning. The last turn we did was called a PK turn. This set of turns travels across space. As you can see when Sarah does it, you have to bring your weight forward so that your center of gravity also comes forward so that you can travel while you're turning.
Finding the center of gravity in contact improv is different because it must be found in relation to 2 dancers, not just one. Here you can see 2 dancers pulling away from each other, placing the center of gravity at a fairly equal distance from each other. As one dancer moves her leg backwards, the center of gravity briefly shifts in her direction. Next, the point of contact shifts from hands to shoulders and then continues a rolling point to the head and back. The center of gravity stays fixed at this point of connection. As you can see, if one dancer were to be suddenly removed, the other would fall. This is because they share a center of gravity, unlike the other dance forms.
As the 2 guys in the group, Seth and Michael stand out for multiple reasons. They are the only 2 guys in the group, but also the only 2 non-dance majors. The first movement that both of them did was the pirouette. In Michael's pirouette, his center of gravity becomes a curve rather than the straight line, which caused him to fall out of the turn. Seth, however, has a little bit more dance experience, so his center of gravity comes up in almost a straight line with a slight diagonal, and the center of gravity falls as he kind of falls out of the turn at the end. The second movement both of the guys did was a simple balance in retrait. Michael's center of gravity stays mostly in a straight line as he goes up and lifts up, but he still falls out because his balance is slightly off. The same is true for Seth. His balance comes up straight, however, once he gets to the top, he starts to fall a little bit, causing his center of gravity to shift to the left, and then ultimately falling out of the balance. The final movement that both of the guys did was a leap. Michael was able to keep the same center of gravity as the dancers. His center of gravity goes down as he prepares to launch upward, and then it follows him up and then comes back down, all the while staying about at his pelvis. The same is true for Seth. His center of gravity goes down as he plies and gets ready to jump. You'll notice at the end of Seth's leap, he goes into a plie, which causes the center of gravity to go a little bit lower than Michael's.